Sweden, often confused with its European neighbor Switzerland, does have at least one thing in common. We hear about how the Swiss remained neutral during World War II, but Sweden joined not only the Swiss, but the Portuguese, Spanish, and Irish in remaining neutral for the entirety of the war. Sweden had remained neutral since the end of the Napoleonic Wars in 1814, but before World War II, they had been investing into their military, with an over 500% increase in spending from 1938-1939, but Prime Minister Per Albin Hansson urged outside nations not to expect too much military interference. Friendly with all other nations, and strongly linked to our neighbors, we look on no one as our enemy. There is no place in the thoughts of our people for aggression against any other country, and we note with gratitude the assurances from others that they have no wish to disturb our peace, our freedom, or our independence. The strengthening of our defense preparations serves merely to underline our fixed determination to keep our country outside the conflicts that may erupt amongst others, and during such conflicts, to safeguard the existence of our people. Hansson was the head of the Social Democrats and took power in 1932, with his main opposition being communists even more left-wing on the spectrum. They were so left-wing in fact, they would refer to Hansson's Social Democrats as the social fascists. While there were elements of the right wing in Sweden, the terrible working conditions they had been through had caused them to value a strong left-wing presence to ensure workers' rights. In 1939, Germany signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact with the Soviet Union. This was a non-aggression agreement between the two nations, and the Swedish communists were actually supportive of this, being loyal to the Soviets because of shared ideology. After Operation Barbarossa though, when Germany finally did invade Russia in 1941, they grew stale on the Germans. Hansson wasn't as gung-ho on the Soviets, especially after they invaded neighboring Finland soon after the war began in Europe, in a conflict that would be known as the Winter War. While Sweden offered no direct or official military aid, 8,000 Swedish volunteers did set out to defend Finland, and the government and populace donated tons of weapons and ammo, food, and clothing, as well as 12 Gloster Gladiator fighter planes. The Red Army did take a bit of Finnish land, but their losses were large, and the poor performance could have emboldened the Germans to go through with breaking their pact and commencing Operation Barbarossa. Sweden's role in this is controversial, as they allowed German troops to cut across their land by train via occupied Norway. Nowadays, it's portrayed as a heavy-hearted decision that was deliberated at long lengths, but some say those stories are just to clean up Hansson's image. The decision was probably a difficult one, if even from an image standpoint. Troop transportation wasn't the only way Sweden made the Germans' life easier. They also provided iron ore to the Germans, which was vital for their campaign. So vital in fact that British MP Sir Ralph Glynn had stated that without ore from Sweden, the Germans would have lost the war within months. Sir Winston Churchill was outspoken about it as well. It must be understood that an adequate supply of Swedish iron ore is vital to Germany. The effectual stoppage of the Norwegian ore supplies to Germany ranks as a major offensive operation of the war. He stayed highly critical of Sweden after the war too, claiming they played for both sides. Sweden was in a unique position to offer aid to the Allies as well. You might have heard of Arne Berling, the Swedish math professor. In only a matter of 2 weeks, and not using any technology of his own, Berling unraveled the secret code of the German Siemens and Halske T-52 cipher machine, providing the Allies with invaluable intel as early as 1940. Sweden's been criticized for remaining neutral, and while there was a give-and-take relationship with both the Allies and Germans, the very act of remaining neutral offered him a unique humanitarian opportunity. Not only were the Jews living in Sweden protected, but Jews from Norway and those seeking refuge from Denmark and Finland sought asylum within Sweden's boundaries. And since the country wasn't hostile to the Nazis, Swedes had access to Germany itself, and were able to secretly gather information and send it to the Polish resistance. Sweden's neutrality during World War II made it possible to peaceably offer asylum to refugees from neighboring countries, as well as gather intel without being seen as a threat. Sweden's main concern was to protect themselves, and they clearly fulfilled their goal, as neighboring regions were occupied. The Germans didn't just bulldoze into Sweden because the Allies would then most likely do targeted strikes on their resource deposits. Knowing the Allies wouldn't hit a neutral nation, the Germans were fine with just importing their materials from Sweden. This also spared Sweden from attack and allowed them to pursue their humanitarian efforts, as well as espionage. Their allowing of transport to Nazi troops notwithstanding, their export of ore to the Germans likely did cause the war to last far longer, but there's no way to know whether the Germans would have adapted or gambled in a more destructive way. Thanks for watching.